hello and welcome to this episode of The Complete Advisor. And we're going to dive into a quick topic. This one's going to be a short episode. And then I'll introduce my guest here in just a second. But so every one of us, if you're an advisor, at some point you've cold called. Like, by God, you picked up the phone. Maybe you grabbed the phone book. Maybe you're sitting there. We know the gold standard is to just 100% referrals. That is the dream without having to do any work. Mm-hmm. But that's just not the reality, especially early in a career.
Yeah.
And so we are joined today, special guest Mark Miller. Mark, great to have you here, sir.
Great to be here.
Now we were
good chatting with you.
It is good chatting with you. We were doing some studio work, and I got to brag. Just everybody, when you look, because we'll be on. So we're on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube visually, so people watch us there. If you're not doing books, by the way, Mark's got a couple great books. We did some media work today. They're awesome. But what I wanted to talk about, you were telling us a story in the studio, and you've got to share this one. This is such a great locker room story. So for every one of us, I one time, I didn't tell you this, but one time I was doing door knocking, and I was sitting out there and I was hating it, and it got me in front of the best prospect that I ever got in front of. Also, the first time I learned that when you show somebody a beautiful pie graph, maybe you should discover if they're colorblind or not. That's a whole different ballgame. The guy said, "Hey, I was talking to him about his fixed income," and I said, "Yeah, and right here." And I said, "That's the blue," and he's like, I'm sure this is great, but I want you to know I'm colorblind. Like,
well, at least he told you.
Yeah, the gray next to the gray. Yeah. But so, Mark, you've got a story of cold calling and what can happen. We share it with us.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I first started my career. I started with IDS American Express back in the day, 1986. I go to work, and actually, it was a great gig because it was $24,000 a year. Now that's not much nowadays, but that was pretty good coming out of college. So I was excited about that. And so in the lower level, they had this beautiful lobby office, and of course, all the managers got that. And I kind of had a little pod down there, and that's about it. And they said, "Well, no, this is really where you're going to be working." So they take me up to like the 7th floor, and on the 7th floor, it's literally. There's no pictures on the wall. It's just literally these ugly desks, chairs, a phone, and then a phone book on like 7 or 8 desks. Nothing else. No distractions, anything. And they're like, "Okay, well, this is where you're going to start your career. Open up the phone book." Okay, so they give you these strategies to do all that. Yeah. And I went to school, in Minneapolis is where IDS American Express was located. And so anyway, I literally got on the phone and I start going through the phone book, and I was just calling, using the scripts, all of that kind of stuff. And through that, I found a guy, a super wealthy guy, literally just out of the phone book, that was located here in Kansas City. We're a wealthy area of Kansas City. Yeah. And I ended up selling to him the largest retail life insurance policy that had ever been sold in IDS American Express history. Oof. It was like $30-some-odd million. And the story I was telling you about was that I also found out how much money was in the insurance business with that deal, because they paid me, and my goal was I wanted to make $100,000 a year. Well, literally, I made it within the first year because I got paid like $130,000, of course, immediately as a 22.
And you were 22, right?
Yeah, I was 22. And as a 22-year-old kid, I go out and I, of course, buy a Porsche.
Nice.
And wasn't able to totally pay for it, and several years later, they took it away from me. But anyway, that's a different story. Totally different story. But what I found out, because I didn't get along with the manager at all from the get-go, we just did not, and we kind of had words every once in a while. And I was just, it was kind of a mouthy kid, at 22 years old. Yeah, I knew it all. Come on,
You just made history.
Well, yeah, I just made American Express, and I remember being in his office and him and I kind of raising our voices at each other, and then he let it slip out. I made $130,000. He made $250,000, and I about went through the roof. Yeah. And I was like, "Wait a second, you made $250,000?" So anyway, so that was kind of my. And I joked with you that, ironically, not ironically, but I ended up going really heavily into the annuity space. It's kind of funny that I didn't, after I did, had that success, that I didn't go more into kind of advanced life insurance,
Yeah.
which we're more into now.
That is
But
interesting. Why did do you remember why?
well, actually, I was really enamored with the brokerage business. I worked for a small firm for a period of time, was a broker. And then I got, I'm not going to say sidetracked, it was really good. I wrote a couple nationally published books in the 90s,
Yeah.
had an international newsletter. And throughout the 90s, I, had a publishing company. And did all of this stuff, in the financial field. Was actually on stage with Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey back in
Oh, I
the
didn't
day
know
when
that.
they were kind
That's
of.
badass.
We were all fledgling, at
Yeah.
that time. I ended up deciding because I kind of just wanted to go more of a traditional. I probably could have gone that route because I had really good success with the books I had written and all of that. Not quite like Susie Orman did and
Sure.
everything, but I probably could have gone that route. But I kind of just wanted a more of a traditional, and that's when I opened up my firm and did kind of more traditional wealth management, so I could have a more kind of normal lifestyle, you might say, family life and all of that. So
To swing us back around, do you think if you were starting now, I mean, nobody even has a home phone anymore.
yeah.
I wonder where, if you were starting scratch today, you're 22, where do you think you'd start?
Gosh, it's funny I say that because actually, I mean, it's funny we talk about this story because I naturally like the wealth planner that I've recently brought on, and she is a dynamo and just so excited about the business, just like I was excited
Yeah.
about the business when I was her age. And I've actually really encouraged her. Ironically, I mean, it's just the story just made me think of this. I've been encouraging her to get really good at life insurance
Mm-hmm.
because these advanced concepts, and I work in that area now, and I want her to get good at that. And my gosh, she's 26 years old. If I would have really taken that to heart, what I did and how I sold that policy, and I just didn't really know what I was
Yeah.
doing. It was a little bit of a dumb luck thing. But I'd probably encourage anyone still. Advanced life insurance planning is phenomenal.
I agree.
And I mean, the commissions are amazing. But the things you can do for people are just shocking.
Yeah.
Absolutely shocking. And to this day, I still am kind of a little bit struggling to learn more and more about that because I'm more on the private equity side and money management side. And I still have a real big annuity mindset because I've sold, well over $100 million worth of annuities. So I just know that,
Yeah. It's cleaner.
So,
I might have a bias
It's
myself a little
very
bit.
clean.
That was the thing. When
Yeah.
I was in private practice, you could, you could talk options. You could redo the portfolio. Those were fun. Those were kind of sexy. But then getting
Yes.
into life insurance the only flaw I think that life insurance has, maybe two, is one, you have to be healthy enough for it. But two, you're talking at some point about death.
Yeah.
Which is not maybe the most fun topic, but
Yeah.
but the vehicle otherwise, I mean, it is unbelievable.
Well, for me, it's tough because I'm ADD, and I'm for instance, if I want something done in my business, it's like, let's get it done. Come on, let's get it done, and we'll move on to the next thing.
Yep.
Well, life insurance isn't that way.
No.
It's a long process. And then there's been times when I've had some really big cases that fall apart in the end.
Yeah.
With annuities, okay, you're going to do a $250,000 annuity. It's done. Yeah, paperwork's a little bit of a pain, get money moved from the, other manager and all of that. But you're done in a month and you get paid.
I always think too. It always felt like there was a danger of somebody who really wanted life insurance, then they probably didn't have the health for it. But then, for some reason, if the insurance company, you could have that conversation of, Bob, this is the rate for somebody in your health if they came back rated.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it always, I don't know, it almost had an effect on the relationship overall.
Yeah. I mean, I had a case like that, and we went through with Creative One. We went through the process, even quote a pre-screening, but then it came back. Something was found when they did different, and then it was gone. And we had spent a lot of time with that client, and I think it might have been a $5 or $6 million death benefit. It wasn't massive, but it was pretty good size. And then you're like, now, yeah, like you just said, we are sitting in a place where we're kind of in limbo with that client. And we were moving into wealth management and all of that. Well, it was kind of like, the brakes went on it. So anyway, so those are some things. But overall, though, because I know enough people in the business, and I know some people that do some really big life insurance cases, and overall, it's a great place to be in this industry.
I agree. And so the next time, what's funny is there'll be a whole generation of advisors now that will not understand cold calling and just taking the phone book and picking it up and starting to dial.
I'm sure everyone is going to do that after they just heard this story.
Absolutely.
Everyone,
absolutely. On our side of the business,
don't do that. By the way, probably not.
maybe a little selective, selectiveness. But we're going to have another topic that we're going to talk about. So folks, we're going to land the plane right here. If you get a chance, I would ask you to subscribe to the show, like the show, follow the show, because on Apple, that was the craziest thing. I would keep telling my wife, like, hey, did you subscribe on your phone? And she'd be like, there's no subscribe button. And I'm like, no, subscribe. Turns out on Apple, you actually follow. I did not realize. You follow. It's not a subscription. But drop any comments in if you've got suggestions, topics you want me to dive into on the show. We'll do it. We'll see you next episode.